seen this movie, and some haven't yet. What do you want the audience that hasn't seen this movie yet to get, and what do you think they'll enjoy most about the movie?
I think that they're going to be surprised by what it is, because on its face, it's a film, that's a pretty standard, horror trope about a kid, a creepy kid kind of film. And so I think that there's a lot of surprises to be had in this film because it's not exactly what you think it might be. So I think it's just, hopefully they can just let themselves lose their preconceived notions of what this might be, because it's definitely not that.
You've created a lot of creepy and scary scenes between Stillborn and Z. I kind of wanted to know what is your thought process when you're creating one of these scenes, and how are you able to pull them off so well?
I think a big part of it is just sort of, as a parent myself, it's seeing things that my kids do, and you just how you react to certain things. So when I see my kid go upstairs, for example, at a place that I'm not totally familiar with, you kind of have this anxiety to the situation where you're like, okay, I trust my kid; they're not going to do something stupid, but there's always that what if, and so I like playing in those fringes of the what if, where you're kind of like, well, what if this very normal, banal situation occurs in my life? What if you take it and spin it on its head, and all of a sudden it becomes something really terrible to deal with? What does that look like for me as a family unit? Like how am I going to react to that as a parent? And it's kind of mining those what ifs that is a big part of the horror. Writing horror and executing horror, because you want to put the audience in that position of seeing something pretty standard happening and then spinning it, and how you're going to react as characters, how you would react as a person. And it's all about just taking expectations and kind of spinning them.
You mentioned family and so forth. What has been the hardest part of working? You've worked 2 movies now. You've worked with kids and babies. What is the hardest part about working with them on set?
On Stillborn, it was my niece, which was the hardest part with that, because she couldn't act really. It was just like sort of a prop that you had in the set. So the hardest part of that was just negotiating time with my brother and my sister-in-law, who had to bring the baby to set for overnights and stuff like that. But on Z, we were super fortunate because we got Klyne in the film, and he has been an actor his entire life, basically. I mean, he was a Gerber baby. So when he came to set, there was all these apprehensions about how it would be to work with this kid, because I'd never worked with someone that young before on this scope. And so it was like, is he going to be someone that doesn't really know how to act and needs a ton of work, or am I going to be able to just let the process happen as it normally would? And thankfully, he kind of came on set and immediately, washed those fears away. It became apparent really quickly that he wasn't a kid actor; he was just an actor.
Oh yes, he was definitely fabulous in the movie. I'm guessing that made it extra easy on you.
Yeah, for sure.
In the film, we kind of see an image of Z on the wall at one point, and I'm kind of curious: is that image what you originally thought of Z as, or is that something that kind of developed over the time of the movie?
It was definitely. I mean, we definitely had the idea of a charcoal drawing, but because it was an 8-year-old drawing it on the wall, it was expected to be a lot more just kind of scratchy and vague. But when we started filming, we weren't able to actually draw on the wall of that house because we didn't own the house. We weren't able to do something like that. So that was all visual effects. But when we just started filming, Brittany Allen, who also did the score, she sent this charcoal drawing over, and it was the one you see in the film. And my first instinct was just like, I think this is too good for an 8-year-old to draw. Like, I think the audience will be taken out of it, where they go like, there's no way that kid drew that. But we didn't have anything else, so we kind of just used it as a temporary placeholder. And as time went on, we just kept appreciating it more and more for what it was, and it kind of took a life of its own, where the audience isn't going to be like, how did that kid draw it? It was the question becomes, did that kid draw it? Which I think was really interesting for that to evolve that way.
Yes, it was a fascinating and awesome look, and that was definitely a great, memorable scene in the movie. I guess I should have asked this one with the previous question is Is there anything that you felt that you couldn't do with the movie because you're working with a kid actor, or were you able to pull off everything that you envisioned doing?
I mean, not really. The only thing that I could think of, and this was just for actors in general, was when we were shooting the train sequence. Just for safety regulations, you can't have a kid anywhere near a real train. I mean, we had a real train, but we had to shoot everything separately and piece it together later. And it kind of there's seams to the visual effects there that you can kind of see. So I mean, that's kind of the only instance in the film that had to be kind of manufactured digitally. Whereas the rest of it we were able to just capture because it just worked. So I would say we got so lucky with Jet that we didn't have to worry about things like that. Like what we needed to do, we were able to do. So.
Awesome. It's always, I know it can be tough if you don't want to traumatize the kid while you're on set.
Right.
I'm kind of curious. The end of the story is interesting, and I kind of wanted to know: did you always have that ending in mind when you originally wrote it, or was that something that you kind of started filming and then you kind of like, okay, now I know the end of this movie?
We had two different variations of the ending. They're pretty much the exact same thing. Like they ended up with the new kind of normal that you see at the dinner table, and all that stuff happened. But in one version of it, and we filmed both, there's an alternate ending where they don't do their night-nights or anything like that. Like that was such a developing sort of motif in the film where he keeps saying goodnight to these people. There was a much more subtler version where basically Jenna the aunt is about to close the door and leaves it open a crack, and Josh says, "Wait, don't close the door." And then she closes the door, and it basically ended there because Z likes it dark. So it would have been kind of an acknowledgement that Z was still with him because he normally sleeps with the door open, but doesn't when Z's around. But we like to keep kind of a more open-ended interpretive ending that we could use, and I think the Nine Nights work really well for that.
Oh yeah, it does. I just kind of, I didn't really want to get too much into it because I don't want to give a spoiler, but I did like how the movie kind of turned and you tilted more towards the mom at the end. Did you go over that with the actress before? Did she know that ending was coming and she was going to be so involved with that ending?
Yeah, she definitely knew. I mean, I think that was probably a big part of the challenge for her as an actor to kind of she probably saw it as a huge opportunity to really test herself as an actor, to put herself through that. But, right from the very beginning, Keegan was already pitching ideas to us on how, certain things. And we did change a couple of moments, big moments, near the end climax because of Keegan's input early on. So, I mean, it's definitely one of those things that you have to work really closely with these people because they're going to be, inside this pretty horrific scenario that you wrote. So you kind of have to guide them through it and make sure that everybody is sort of on the same page. And, Keegan was totally game for anything we threw at her.
Well, we know that you've done some movies on now involving family, and you've focused a lot on the moms. Dads have been in the movie, but the focus has been on the moms. Do you think you'll ever do a movie focusing more on the dads, and why have you leaned towards focusing to the moms instead?
I think I will eventually. I've got some things that I'd like to write based on that concept of being a dad and what that's like. But I'm married, so I see a lot of these things happening. I see a lot of these parenthood anxieties coming out of my wife, and so I'm basically an audience to my own family drama at all times. So I'm able to really kind of inspire myself from these moments, and so seeing some of the strengths that a mother like my wife can come up with, is hugely inspiring on wanting to focus more on a mother-centric film.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Brandon. I appreciate your time, and it's good talking to you again. Hopefully,
yeah, you too, man.
Hopefully, we see you down here in Florida for another festival at some point.
Yeah, hopefully they happen again if they're ever a thing.
Right? How did you get involved with Z, and why was it a role that you ended up taking?
They just came across my desk as a possible offer. Would I read it? I read it. I liked it enough to have a meeting, and for me, it was just that I could see something I could really dig my teeth into once I saw that she went from sort of like, I just saw the psychological journey that this woman was going to go on, the roller coaster, and I liked it. I liked the challenge.
And how big of a challenge did that end up being once you started and got into the role?
Big. It was a lot. It was a lot of acting on my own. It was a lot of conjuring tremendous depths of emotion and pain for her. Then that's always a challenge. I'm not a natural crier. I'm very guarded generally, so I don't cry easily. It was a lot of emotional work. It was exhausting in that respect.
And how was it working with Jet, the young man? I know you've worked with a lot of young actors before. So what was it like working with him in particular?
I just feel like it was easy right from the start. He's a kid that's been on set a lot. He knows his way around it. He knows how to be, and his mom is sweet, and we were fast friends. And I think as a mom, you sort of know how to talk to a kid that's, especially when they're the sort of same age as your own kids. So I just found it was an easy relationship.
Yeah, when I spoke to Brandon, he seemed to, and I asked him about him, and he seemed to enjoy his time on set with him as well. So I guess it's very much, easier when you have some experience, and I guess that really helped you along.
Yes, for sure.
So what was there anything in the film that particularly scared you as you were filming, or that you found particularly scary? I mean, coming off with the imaginary character that's here in the film.
I think there's something. It's like the same way that sex scenes in a movie are not at all sexy. Horror scenes, they're just not scary. You've got all your crew around and lights, and the fire is fake and whatever the things are. So I can't say, but there were certainly times when I would go home afterwards to my dark, empty rental apartment, and have moments where I'd be like, had to flip back the shower curtain, because you were just in that space of, I don't know, I guess leftover emotional space.
It definitely, I guess, leaves a lasting effect on you at times. Let's see. The movie kind of flips, and of course, there's a lot of attention to the young boy, but then the movie flips more towards your character and your focus at the end. Were you surprised, and how did you take that as the ending to this movie, and the focus being so much on your character now?
Well, I'd say that's what attracted me to the film is that it looks like it's a scary kid movie, and in the end, it's a movie about a scary mom, I guess. So yeah, that was what appealed to me about it.
And so you've worked in all types of movies and all kinds of genres and so forth. Well, what is it about horror that you like?
I think I had an underdeveloped appreciation for horror prior to doing this, but I enjoyed the challenge of it. I think it's really an underrated genre. I think the work that actors do in it is really difficult work. Making those moments believable, I think, and directors also. And I think sitting in the audiences when I was going around with the film festival section of this, and really seeing how people enjoyed the scares and then the release afterwards, and you sort of really get why people go and why they enjoy horror, and so I have like a newfound appreciation for it.
So when this hit festivals, because I did see this originally at a festival, you actually attended a few and you got to see the reaction? Yeah, it was great to sit in the audience, especially for those big jump scares, and see how people really, loved them, and that's why they go, and it made me understand how to build those moments. Yeah, because and this, I don't want to give it away for people who haven't seen it, but there's a particular scene in this movie that just comes out of nowhere and was just fabulous to be in the audience and see. So I'm sure that was a great reaction for you as well, and you knew it was coming.
Yeah, for sure. Although there's this really emotional scene kind of right after one of them, not the one that I think you mean, but the other one, and she's just breaking down, and everybody's still laughing from the release of the scare before it.
Did you find that awkward when, because some people laugh instead of get scared, and that's their way of dealing with it? Is that awkward sitting through? Because you want people to be scared.
No, because they were laughing afterwards, It's just that the release of it was so big that their laughter lasted well into the next scene, which I thought, unfortunately, sort of takes away from the gravity of the scene that follows it. But at the same time, it just tells you how successful that jump scare is. That people were like, blah blah blah, we have to talk about it. Oh yes, we should pay attention.
So it's kind of interesting. We talked a little bit about the end of the movie. Did you have how much input did you have into your character and what was going on, particularly at the end, since the focus is so much on you?
Yeah, I think a lot. Whenever you're doing an indie, you have sort of more availability for your opinion and your sense of where that character is going. And Brandon, to his credit, really let me talk about that and let me tell them what, as an actor, would make that performance more believable for me, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, I feel like right from the get-go, I was able to say to them, I think there's this, and this. Even like her ultimate, what happens to her in the end was my suggestion. It wasn't the original way that it went, but I felt it tied in with the father well, and you'll see when you see. But they were wonderful about letting me collaborate about what was happening for her.
Speaking of the father, and I kind of asked Brandon this question too, because his movies tend to have a father, but more to the side. Did you want to see more from the father in this movie, or were you glad that the focus was really on your character?
I was glad it was focused on me, sure. But would it have been interesting to have known more about that father? For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe a sequel or a prequel.
Prequel. We're always good for prequels. I don't know about sequels sometimes. But you mentioned that I think you said you have children of your own?
Yep.
Do they have imaginary kids, or do you ever think about them having imaginary kids? I mean, how did that kind of play with them?
My younger one had an imaginary friend that she talked about a lot when she was younger, and they had their own language, and they had a whole thing going. And then just as they get older, they sort of tend to let it go. And, she never even talks about that anymore.
Okay, and at no point in this movie were you filming thinking, well, I'm glad that this kind of event didn't happen to me.
Well, yeah, those moments where she's walking up the stairs and he's talking to Z, and she's like, what the heck? Yeah, I'm pretty okay that we didn't have that.
And how about yourself? Did you have an imaginary friend at any point that may have scared your parents?
Did. No, I think enough of my real life was scary enough, so.
All right. I think that's it. You've answered all of my important questions.
Okay.
About Z, I guess, can I throw in one last question about something else? I'm a little bit of a Disney fan as well, and I noticed that you're in The Descendants. How well did that all come out? And being on set for such a major 3-part experience.
Yeah, I don't know. I originally read for Maleficent, which makes me laugh now because it was probably always going to Kristen Chenoweth, as it should. And then I just played it funny, even though it wasn't necessarily funny on the way, I don't know, I guess it probably was. But anyhow, the way I played it piqued their interest enough that they brought me back for Belle, and I played Belle funny, and they liked it, and the rest is, I guess, history, because now I'm the Queen of Oregon.
Awesome. Well, you did a great job on that, and I'm also a fan of Once Upon a Time, and you did fabulous on that as well.
Well, thank you very much.
So I just wanted to throw that in there. But I definitely thank you for your time, and it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, my pleasure too. Thanks, Omar.
Thank you.